After he'd fed the people, Jesus made the disciples get into a boat and precede him to the other side while he dismissed the crowds. When it was evening, he was there alone. Meanwhile, the boat, already a few miles offshore, was being tossed about by the waves, for the wind was against it. During the fourth watch of the night, he came toward them walking on the sea. When the disciples saw him walking on the sea, they were terrified. "It is a ghost," they said, and they cried out in fear. At once Jesus spoke to them and said, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid." Peter said to him, "Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water." He said, "Come." Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened, and beginning to sink, he cried out, "Lord, save me." Immediately Jesus stretched out his hand and caught Peter and said to him, "O ye of little faith, why did you doubt?" After they got into the boat, the wind died down. Those who were in the boat did him homage, saying, "Truly, you are the Son of God." Hello and welcome to Close Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you can join us. The thing that I love the most about the Apostle Peter is the only time he opened his mouth was to change feet. He was forever stepping in it. Peter was the big mouth. "Oh Lord, I'll never deny you. Oh Lord, I'll never deny you." Shut up, Peter. You'll deny me 3 times before the cock crows. "Oh Lord, you'll never wash my feet. Oh, all right, then you have no share in my kingdom. Okay, well, give me a shower." "Oh, Lord, if it's you, tell me to walk to you on the water." "Come here, come here." And he did fine until he took his eyes off the Lord. And then he started to go under. That challenge in the midst of the stuff, the world, to not be afraid, to not doubt. And you know that I'm trying to look for the right context. You know, and that is when we deal with life on life's terms. You know, there's so many difficult challenges. And unfortunately, there are those who think faith is an insurance policy. There are those who think, you know, things are getting bad. Let me pull out my insurance policy and see what's covered here and see if God's going to cover this. And it's not really an insurance policy. It's a fortification. It's a strengthening. You know, when we deal with the stuff of life, and I have a cousin whose 45-year-old daughter is dying of cancer. And she's dying. It's spread everywhere. Spread everywhere. You know, the brain, the pelvis, both lungs, everything. And I can't imagine being a dad, watching my daughter die, and not being able to help her. And it's been a pretty incredible spiritual journey. This illness it was a great faith journey for him all of his life. But for his daughter, her faith, a very ordinary person got sick. I think a very holy person is going to die. And that's been the challenge. But you know, I as we were visiting on the phone, he's out of state and I don't get a chance to see him. And I was talking about how he's doing. You know, we so oftentimes focus on the person who's ill or dying, and the people around him are suffering as much, if not more, than the person themselves. And so we had that little tender moment, how are you doing, you know? And we talked about it, and of course, I mean, his faith is pretty incredible. And I told him a story, and it's a true story. A lady I knew came to go to confession, and she had 10 children, and she miscarried the 11th child. And she said that miscarriage was so very hard on her. And so she said, one day, I'm in my room all alone, and she said, I'm just crying. I'm grieving my baby that I miscarried. I didn't get to hug him and didn't get to hold him and everything. And I'm thinking, lady, you got 10 kids and you got alone. That's your first miracle, okay? But she said, you know, I'm in the bedroom crying, and my husband walked in and said, what's wrong? She said, I miss him. And she started talking about not being able to hug and hold her baby and do all that stuff. And said, the husband very gently said, honey, we got one in heaven. We need to get the other 10 there now. It was a profound story. It happened to me 20 years ago. But a profound story. And I shared that with my cousin the other day, because that's his great consolation in the middle of watching his 45-year-old daughter die, is that he knows what this illness has done. A very ordinary girl became extraordinarily holy through her suffering and through her death. And when we talk about, you know, oh Lord, help us, we're going to drown out here. Okay. Those cries are never in vain. But it's not a rescue service. You know, well, you know, I prayed and I prayed and I prayed and they died anyway. Why do I need to go to church? Why do I need to talk to God? He doesn't hear my prayers. He doesn't listen to me. He doesn't care what I want. And you know that old adage, we all want to serve God, but most of us want to do it in an advisory capacity. And we need to think about that. How many of our prayers do you think we really seek God's will? How many of our prayers do you think we seek God's wisdom and God's way for our life? Or how many of our prayers are kind of, God, if you love me, you're going to do this. God, if you love me, you're not going to let this happen. God, if you love me, you're going to hear my prayers and you're going to answer it. And if you don't, then what's the need of talking to God? See, it doesn't do any good. And I guess what I take home from my cousin is to watch your 45-year-old daughter die through the eyes of faith is much different than watching a 45-year-old child die through the eyes of the world. The world's going to tell you this is not fair. The world's going to tell you she never did anything to deserve this. The world's going to say, don't give up, you need to spend whatever you have to get her to live. The world's going to say, if she doesn't live, then why do you need to pray? And, you know, this is a man whose faith has been there all along. His belief has been there all along. His trust in God has been there all along. We had a lot of conversations early on in the disease. And he was praying for the miracle. He really was praying for the miracle. And we did all that. The best that money can buy, and we did all that, taking him here, there, and everywhere. And it's not to be. And he doesn't know why. And I don't know why. But he finds great consolation in knowing that his wife gave him 5 children, and they're about ready to get one of them back to God. Do they want to lose that child? Absolutely not. Is it easy to watch her suffer? Absolutely not. Then where's the consolation? The consolation is knowing that what God has asked us to do, at least with this daughter, we've achieved it. We think we have. We would have loved to have achieved it another way. We'd have loved for it to last a lot. We'd have loved all those things. But that's not ours. And it's been a pretty powerful story. And so, you know, I have a good friend, and he said, you know, we had a storm in the Gulf. And whenever a storm gets a name, the insurance company say after, you know, 10 a.m. Tuesday, when the National Hurricane Center named it, you can no longer write a policy. He said, when a storm is named, people are ringing my phone off the wall. Now they want to get insurance because here's a storm brewing. But the people who've had insurance all along will be the ones who are protected. And I believe that's very, very real in faith. When we've had it all along, when we've kept it current, when we've done what we needed to do to pay for it, to feed it, to strengthen it, when the time comes that we need it, it'll be there. The last minute, yeah, God hears you. And God does what God wants to do. And maybe we will get the miracle. But more often than not, the people who get the miracle very easily are the ones who lose the faith right after the storm is over. They don't need them anymore. But those who all along have had it, whatever comes along, they're ready. We'll talk about that when we come back. Stay with us. Hi, I'm Father Jeff Baye from Closer Walk Catholic Communications. Thank you for being here today, and a special thanks for the support that you give us. First of all, your prayerful support we so desperately need, and also your financial support. We are donor-driven, and that is what keeps us on the air today. As you well know, the truth is in great demand and in very short supply, and mainstream media is not going to bring you the truth of the Gospels of our Lord Jesus Christ because that's not socially acceptable and it's not politically correct. Certainly we all realize that when this life journey's over, we don't stand before the Supreme Court, we stand before the throne of God. Therefore, with great clarity and great charity, to pronounce the truth of the gospel is important. Your prayers, your financial support enables us to do that. So we thank you, and may God bring you closer in your walk with the Lord each day. God bless you. At once, Jesus spoke to them, "Take courage, it is I. Do not be afraid. Peter said in reply, Lord, if it is you, command me to come to you on the water. He said, come. Peter got out of the boat and began to walk on the water towards Jesus. But when he saw how strong the wind was, he became frightened and began to sink and cried out, Lord, save me. Hello and welcome back to Close Walk Catholic Communications. I'm Father Bayer, your host, and we're glad that you could come and join us again. Lord, if it's really you, tell me to walk on water. Wow. And you know what? He did. For a little while, he did. And just when he thought this wind was stronger, that he got scared and he started to go under. The idea that anything we do, anything we face, anything that life has in store for us, it's possible. If you can conceive it, by the grace of God, you can achieve it. Not many people understand that. Not many people understand, and I'm not saying, so you can be the first one to land on Mars. I'm not. That's not what I'm talking about, conceiving and achieving. But there are a lot of things in life that are frightening, really frightening. Well, what if this happens? What if that happens? What if we don't make it? What if we run out of money? What if this? What? Ad nauseum, we can make a list of what ifs. And a lot of times we're paralyzed with fear because we're so scared. And, like Peter, oh yeah? Well, if it's really you, tell me. And it begins with taking that first step and believing that God is going to see you through it. If God has brought me to it, God is going to bring me through it. A lot of times I look at the world, life situation, some of the things that we as a society have accepted today as a matter of course. And I know I'm not the only one who thinks that, I don't know what future generations are going to believe. It dawned on me the other day that, anyone born after 1973, which means you'll be 45 next year, you've never lived in a world where you didn't think abortion was a constitutionally protected right. Wow. That's interesting. 45 and down, that's been a right all your life. I grew up thinking differently. I grew up with thinking things about parents and about teachers and about policemen and about, priests and nuns. My sense of authority was much different than what I see going on in the world today. That scares me. There's no authority other than me. That scares me. And it's a generational thing that, it's like they're heading down a cliff and they don't even have a rope on them, okay? If they're going to do that. And that frightens me. Uh, the world situation, the migration of peoples, the countries where people are being slaughtered en masse and people are fleeing for their freedoms, and then the immigration crisis and they're being turned away, and then some go and they abuse the privilege, and then the onset of ISIS and people who want to destroy the Western society. That frightens me. The degradation of human life frightens me. When we can sell 8 and 10-year-old children into sex trade because someone's buying and selling these children, it's upsetting. When we're forcing children into labor situations, that you have children dying at the age of 20 at a ripe old age if they don't drown first doing the work that they're doing, that's upsetting. When you have people in third world countries who are either having their organs taken from them or are selling their organs to first world people because they don't have money to live on, so they sell a kidney, things like that, that scares me. And so I don't have the answer to it, but I can't look around. I can't be focused on only how strong ISIS is. I can't be focused on only how many children are sold into slavery. I can't be focused on a lost generation who think that they're king of their own universe. I've got to be focused on that's going to change things. And thinking that the right political election, thinking that the right amount of money is going to change all that, it's not. What's going to change it is when people's hearts and minds start to change. One of the things that happened, speaking of those horrible realities of, the forms of human trafficking, forced labor, sex trade, and organ procurement, I spoke at an international conference, and everyone was talking about, a child doesn't deserve to be treated that way, and so poor they have to sell their organs, and this, that, and the other. And they talked about the dignity of the person and how the dignity of the person didn't deserve that. And I was one of the last speakers, and I said, I so wholeheartedly agree that the dignity of the person must be respected. But please understand, any society that decides which children get to be born and which children are killed, which old people can afford to grow old and be sick, and which are put out of their misery and are killed, and which criminals that they decide is going to be executed, and which one. I said, when human life is a matter of opinion, it's just where the most votes are. Where the most votes are. What if we were to say that a child born with Down syndrome is never going to have a real quality of life? We don't think they ought to live. And people are doing that, by the way. If they realize there is some genetic problem with the child, they call it therapeutic abortions. And people are doing that. But, am I going to out-argue this side of the group or that side of the group? Am I going to get more pro-lifers and more pro-choicers, or, get more pro-euthanasia than more anti-euthanasia? Is that the fight? No. The fight is turning more people back to the fidelity of God. Because any other fight is going to be temporary. Very temporary. when our hearts are far away from God, and when we're more concerned about how strong the wind is than we are concerned about where our source is, we're never going to change it. Do I sound Pollyanna? Yeah, I know that. Do I sound like politically, I don't know one elbow from the other? Yeah, I know I sound like that. Well, let me ask you something. All the money we spent on wars, all the money we spent on political campaigns, all the money we've spent on genocides, has anyone changed it? Has anyone eradicated it? Has anyone made it better? Or does it just keep getting worse? That's why I'm saying that the sinful human nature is not about ready to save itself until we turn back to God. And that's part of this fear that we live with in the world. And look, we can have security lines last for 2 days getting on an airplane. We're not going to secure the world. Just not going to do it. We can try. And when we start changing the hearts and minds of people, we start changing our circumstances. When we just kill more than our enemies do, all we do is prolong it, perpetuate it, and in many ways make it much worse. Peter kept his eye on the Lord, and he did the impossible. He walked on water until he took his eye off the Lord and started looking at the other forces around. And that's when he went under. That's where we're headed until we put our eyes back on the Lord. And if you say, I'm just silly and Pollyanna and that'll never work, the only thing I can tell you is it's going to happen one person at a time. Not one nation, not one army, one person at a time. All I'm asking you to do is do your part and keep your eye fixed on the Lord. When enough people do that, that's where change is coming. Not wars, not guns, not politics. Thanks for being with us. May each day bring you closer in your walk with the Lord. God bless you.